So I'm going to start just by reading a poem called Connections by a lady called Marge Piercy, partly because it's an autumny kind of a poem, so quite relevant, but also because it's about connections, and that is what we're all doing now, making connections with each other. So hopefully it's a good poem to start off with. Connections are made slowly. Sometimes they grow underground. You cannot always tell by looking at what is happening. More than half a tree is spread out in the soil under your feet. Penetrate quietly as the earthworm that blows no trumpet. Fight persistently as the creeper that brings down the tree. Spread like the squash plant that overruns the garden. Gnaw in the dark and use the sun to make sugar. Weave real connections, create real nodes, build real houses. Live a life you can endure, make life that is loving. Keep tangling and interweaving and taking more in, a thicket and bramble wilderness to the outside, but to us it is interconnected with rabbit runs and burrows and lairs. This is how we are going to live for a long time, not always. For every gardener knows that after the digging, after the planting, after the long season of tending and growth, the harvest comes. So now I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who is going to speak to us first a little bit about her experience of making the film for the Interfaith Contact Group, Light in the Lockdown, which she did, obviously, as the title suggests, during the recent full lockdown. And if you want to see the film and you haven't already seen it, just go to the Interfaith Contact Group website at interfaithcontactgroup.com, and there you will see the film. But Sarah's going to tell us about the making of it. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Charlotte. Hi, everyone. In fact, I see some friends from the film. David Knight was very kind to participate and actually summed up really what the IFCG was so good at, and that is to keep everybody connected. And the words of connection had only just started to penetrate out into the world, but everywhere I went, people had read it and they were actually making an impact. But the great thing about making films is that I have a license to sort of to call people and go, oh, hello, you know, I'd like to chat to you about what you're doing. Do you mind? And often people just say yes and tell you, and it's fantastic. And I had the privilege to call lots of the faith leaders in the city and just find out what the churches were doing, what the faith communities were doing for the less fortunate people who were struggling. And actually what was happening was the faith communities had already been helping the community, and they were just pivoting the activities that they were doing to fit in with the pandemic circumstances. So, for instance, invested in a kitchen in the church that is it's almost like a commercial kitchen, and it's rented out. It's not even rented, it's just given to a local charitable organisation that makes lunches for elderly people, and they usually come bust in and have 200 people in a hall eating lunch, and there's volunteers from the church, and it's a real community effort. And then during COVID, they had to change that, where the community came, picked up bags of food from maybe there were 20 people in one neighborhood, and they would take the food and deliver it on the doorstep. And it was absolutely brilliant. It was it was just a ingenious way of doing the lunch club. And the Islamic community were doing the same, and the Jewish community doing exactly the same. Everyone was just pivoting their activities that in the neighborhood. And I was actually shocked at how much the faith communities do already. That's what floored me the most in our world, where we've had a conservative government for a very long time and austerity. The faith communities, I think, have picked up a lot of the slack. And there was an amazing piece in The Guardian on Sunday. I don't know if everybody read it, and it was about the value of the faith communities and their contribution to our national GDP, whatever it is. And it was a study that was done by, I think, by the National Churches Association, or something, and it was summing up the amount of how much the Church of England and its premises deliver, and it's £12.4 billion worth of help that it delivers to communities, and that's everything from food banks, and community meals, arts and crafts programs, music groups, toddlers groups, gardening clubs, youth clubs, book clubs, after school clubs, mental health help, everything. And it's quite astonishing that we don't appreciate this as much as we should. And often a lot of churches are falling down and they need help. And I think that the government should actually help the upkeep of a lot of these premises a lot more, because they offer so much to the community. There's a fantastic statistic that they said that there are now more food banks than there are McDonald's in the UK at the moment, which is absolutely astounding. But that was my experience, really, and it was, yeah, it was, I feel quite emotional. It was really amazing. So, any questions, anybody?
Thank you, Sarah. And
when was this in The Guardian, please?
On Sunday, Andrew. I can send you the link if you like.
Yeah, it'd be very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you should definitely blow the horn for the Church of England.
Yeah, Sunday, but there's no Guardian on Sunday. It must have been Saturday, was it?
Let me have a look.
Observer. No, it was the Observer.
Sunday Observer.
Yeah, Sunday Observer.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
The other thing that came out so strongly from your film, Sarah, was, as well as what you've just said about how much the faith communities were doing all the time, even before COVID, was the common aims and the common vision, really, that they had, regardless of their theology or their particular beliefs or, particular holy books or buildings, or, just what came out of the film was the commonality of the vision. It was really strong, I felt. Anybody want to ask Sarah any other questions about it or about the film itself?
Yeah, I watched the film, Sarah, and I just loved it. I thought it was a brilliant piece of work. And I just wondered if there were things that had come out of the film that were questions for you that you wanted to follow up on with a sort of sequel.
Sorry, my internet connection is just playing up. Were you just asking about a sequel?
Yeah, in brief, yeah, because I thought the film was so good. And I just wondered if questions had arisen for you while you were doing that you'd like to follow up in a sequel.
Sorry.
Could you freeze again then?
Yeah, yes, I did. Sorry.
I can try and answer that for Sarah, because I know that she wants to do something about connecting communities now, having seen that how closely connected all these communities were. She would like to do a film for the Interfaith service this year about connecting communities, which will build in some different things like the words of connection that Sarah spoke about at the very beginning of this meeting, which is how Anthea in particular has been sending out to people through the Interfaith Contact Group readings and prayers and thoughts that people might find helpful at this time. So that might answer your question a little bit, David. So now I'm going to ask Lynn to say a few words now, because the autumn equinox took place not so very long ago. And this is very important to all of us, but especially the pagan community, perhaps. So Lynn is going to speak to us now about the importance of the autumn equinox. Okay, Lynn. Lynn, you just need to unmute yourself. So if you...
Right, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, good. That's all right. The wonders of technology. Okay, autumn equinox, from a pagan, from our beliefs and our viewpoint, which is usually from the 21st to the 23rd of September. Many of us view it as a harvest festival, but it's actually an awful lot more than that. Historically, it used to coincide, our celebrations used to coincide with Michaelmas, the Feast of St. Michael and all the angels, which was one of the 4 quarter days. These were traditionally the dates when all the debts were settled, and the magistrates and landlords and people would travel the country and collect their dues. Why that's so important now is that the harvest had to be open over, because a proportion of the harvest went to pay for the rents or for debts. And if the harvest wasn't gathered in, everybody would get together, everyone in the village, all the families, even the children, would all come together and would work to make sure that the harvest was in, so that the debts and land fees could be paid, and that there was sufficient food saved for the community. So again, it's the community coming together is very much at the heart of this whole thing, even now. You know, once they got it all in, then they'd have their celebration. Then it was the celebration of the autumn equinox, when they could have a bit of fun and relax before they start again preserving and making jam and all the rest of the things that they do for the winter. Why it's so relevant to us now is that it's a reminder to us that our ancestors lived through such hard times, and even with what we've got now, the uncertain times that we're living in, we know that we don't have to go out there and you know, do manual work to make sure that we can live. There is a shop on the corner that we can go to and buy a loaf of bread, you know, and if the harvest isn't brought in, we're not going to starve through the winter. So again, it's a reminder to us that we must remember to be grateful for what we have, and to balance out that gratefulness. One of the things that we do in conjunction, well, the same thing that all the other churches do, but because we're so little, nobody really knows, but we try and balance out to give as much as we receive during the year. So, you know, we will try and do good things for other people. We will try and help others, well, as much as we can, actually. But obviously the idea is that it balances out what we've received. As you know, the equinox is an astrological time of equal light and darkness. And for us, it's during that time that we reflect on those seasons past, and we ask the old ones, our gods, the god and goddess, to watch over us during the harsher times that are to come, the winter, And we believe that through our connections, we will find a more spiritual, emotional level that we can extend into our daily lives. So it's very much a time when we look at our lives and we look back at what we've done during the year, and we find that balance mentally, physically, emotionally, so that we can be closer to the gods in our daily lives, and we can actually put that out to others. For a lot of country pagans, when you talk about equinox, they will talk about a transitional time between the oak and the holly. One of, excuse me, sorry about this. One of the things that an awful lot of pagans believe is that the oak is the guardian of the forest during the summer months, because the oak is a big, strong tree. It's hardwood, it's always beautiful, and it's there. And that is the guardian of the forest during the summer. When it comes to the autumn, the leaf starts falling off, and the oak, like every other tree, sort of closes down for the winter. And therefore, he hands over that guardianship of the mantle to the holly, which is an evergreen tree and which will be there all the way through the winter. You know, protecting the smaller animals and having the berries for the birds to eat. But we also, as I say, celebrate our harvest festival, and we still mark the safe gathering in of the corn and the barley and the grains, but also other crops, particularly vegetables and fruits. Again, it's this whole thing of being thankful for what we have. There is so much to give thanks for. You know, it's been a fruitful year this year. If you look at the hedgerows, the berries that are on there, such abundance. There are blackberries, sloes, elderberry, rowan. I mean, it's fantastic if you go out and have a look. So in many ways, it still is like the harvest festival that I used to attend when I was a child. You know, we'd go out, we'd gather the berries from the hedgerows, we'd take them into the local village hall, we'd decorate it, and our parents would bring their gifts, you know, bread or pies or whatever they baked or whatever they had in their gardens, and that would be placed on an altar, and at the end of the evening, they would be distributed to those who had less, to the people that needed things. So again, it's so much about giving thanks for what we've already had and giving back to those who need it. I still go out and gather hedgerows, plants every year to dress our altar. I'm a winemaker, so we drink elderberry wine, or elderberry cordial for those that don't drink. And this is to remind ourselves that the god at Lammas, which is the first cut of the harvest, which is August time, laid down his life willingly to give his blood into the land for us. You'll see there's sort of few similarities there, but it is very much something that we believe in. And he shed his blood for us so that we could survive through the winter. It's also a time of the mother. In Welsh, the name is Modron, and there's all sorts of stories that go with this, but I won't get into that now. And again, the elder tree is the mother tree. Oak is the father, elder is the mother, and ash is the child, or the mabon. But again, we drink a drink which remind us of the blood of the God that was shed for us and of the love of the mother. Some pagans will drink blackberry wine or cordial at this time. It's because the vine of the Druidic tree alphabet has been looked at by a lot of scholars who said that actually it's not just a vine, it's bramble blackberry. So they would drink that. Again, I think it's a matter of preference. It's not that important. But at the forefront of all this, what we must acknowledge, and what we do acknowledge very much, is that we are looked after, and we give thanks particularly to all those people, and I include our soldiers and all those people that have laid down their lives for us in some way or another. so that we can live our lives the way we do. We have so much freedom in this country, you know, barring that we can't get out a bit at the moment. And as I said, it's giving back. The other thing that during the darker nights, we retire into the safety of our own hearth. And again, this is the safety of the home, of the mother. And we believe this is a healing time when we can take the time to be with our friends and our families, and we can talk together, we can meditate, we can review our dreams, we can help each other if we can. And as part of that transformation work is to find our own spirituality, review our dreams, our lives, and touch the God and find what we can inside us, to acknowledge any truth, and to also try to work on it if we find that we got things that we're not that happy with. The idea is that we're supposed to sort of think, okay, we'll try and balance them out and do something good and try and achieve something. So it's all to do with giving thanks in a way for the harvest, all harvest, not just harvest of grain, but all that we've had and all we've received during this year. And again, giving back as much as we possibly can to say thank you to the gods and to our community. And we then wait in this time of transformation, in this time of thought, until the springtime. And gosh, I hope I've sort of given you an idea what it's about. It's really difficult to put into a short bit. I don't know what the situation is at this point. If you want to ask questions, I'm happy, or I'll hand over to Charlotte, I think. And
thank you so much, Lynn. That was absolutely fascinating, and you did put it across really well.
Right.
Thank you.
I tend to talk very quietly, very quickly when I'm doing these things. I keep getting told to talk slowly. I hope that didn't.
No, I mean, I could certainly hear every single word of what you said. Thank you.
That's okay.
So if anybody has a question for Lynn, just unmute yourself and ask her right away.
Hello, Lynn.
Hi, David.
That was absolutely fascinating. I'm responsible for spiritual care in the Sussex Community Trust, NHS Trust. And meeting you this evening is just brilliant, because I've been trying for the last year to find somebody who can advise me on spiritual care for pagan patients, and generally to feed into spiritual care policy for the trust from a pagan perspective. And I was just wondering, if I put my email address down in the chat bar, would you get, I'll buy you a coffee, you know. I'll come wherever you like, because I'd just love to pick your brains, if I may.
You're very welcome. Until about 3 months ago, I was the chaplain for Brighton and Hove, the pagan chaplain. So David knows me well.
Yeah, that's the the University Hospital
Peter,
Trust, isn't it? Yeah, Peter Wells. Yeah. I'm in the funny little diffuse trust that covers the whole of Sussex.
Right.
And looks after everything that nobody else does.
Right.
Now, we've got 9 bedded units, the MAC team, dentistry, sexual health, school nurses, you know, physios, the lot. So it's a huge responsibility, and spiritual care is just developing there.
Yeah. Well, by all means, get in touch. If I can help in any way, I will. As I say, myself, or I'm sure there's some others that I can twist the arms of.
Thank you. I'm writing now, and thank you once again. That was really, really interesting.
Thanks, David. Does anybody else have a question for Lynn? No, in that case, I'd like to ask you.
Yeah, sorry, could I, after you, Charlotte. After you.
No, please go ahead, Helen. You go ahead.
So Lynn, I really know very little about the pagan faith, so it's really interesting to hear just a snippet about it. So you talked about the mother and father gods. Are those the two main, the gods that you always refer to, or are there more than that?
Well, it depends on which branch of paganism you come from, and unfortunately, like many of your different groups, there are a lot of different branches, and a lot of different branches will then work with different gods and goddesses. For example, the Egyptian, those that follow a Kemetic form of craft, which follow the Egyptian, will talk about Isis and Osiris. I tend to work with the gods and goddesses of this land, of this country, and therefore I just tend to call them the Lord and Lady. So for me, there's not necessarily any name, because when you start looking at it and you go back in through history, different areas have different names, and they tend to be local names. So for me, if I say the Lord and Lady, it encompasses all of them wherever I might be. But yes, we talk about a Lord and a Lady, the Mother, God, Mother and Father, God and Goddess.
Thank you.
I think I've answered that all right.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much.
And hello.
Hello.
Do you have of formal meetings for worship in Brighton and Hove?
We don't have temples, we don't have buildings, unfortunately. So we tend to meet in each other's homes, a bit in the same way that the Baha'i used to do years ago. And yes, we do. We have 8 celebrations over the course of a year. The autumn equinox is one of them. So there are 4 pastoral and 4 astrological celebrations that we will go into, that we will have. Autumn equinox, we tend to work at the time of the equinox. We all get together and we have a celebration. Let's say we all bring what we can from our gardens, from the hedgerows, from wherever we can get them, and we share them. Is that David telling me I've got a few minutes to go? Or
No.
All right. So yes, so we do. We basically mark the turning of the year of nature is what we do.
Thank you.
I can go into a lot more detail when but if I aware that time is limited, so I don't want to get
Can I
into.
just quickly ask you, Lynn, whether out of the 4 pastoral and 4 astrological celebrations that you have, would you say that any are more important than any of the others, or would you say they're all equally important to you?
They're equally important. I think it's just from different reasons. The pastoral ones were obviously the earlier ones. They're linked to times when the lambing would have been done at Imbolc at beginning of February. And if you look at the country fairs, you will see that they more or less join with those. The astrological ones, you will know that it's the 2 equinoxes and the 2 solstices, so they're very easy. But the others are Imbolc, which is the beginning of February, which is the new time when the ewes are born, beginning of life over the land of the spring, and it's a renewal. May Day or Beltane, which again is the time of it's regeneration. It's a time of everybody getting together, and it's that time when everything is sowed, when the land is really coming into its own. Lammas again is when we talk about the harvest, the death of the god who gives his life for the land, spills his life for the land, and then back again to Halloween, or Hallowmas, or Samhain as it's called, which again is not all ghosts and ghoulies. It's actually a time when we reunite with our ancestors. So and it's the Celtic New Year.
Charlotte, can I ask a question? Yeah, Bird to Lynn, which is a current one. I mean, thank you very much for a very interesting brief discussion. When you're talking, I was just thinking, how are you coping with COVID-19? Because you meet in people's houses, you meet your meet outside, and there's severe restrictions now.
Yeah,
and it must be very challenging.
It
so
is.
I'd be interested to know how you've been able to keep up your keep up with your fellow community.
Well, up until now, we have been meeting outside because we won't meet indoors because it's a risk to our people. So we've been meeting outside. We're very careful with things that we bring. That, for example, if somebody was bringing some apples to the harvest, they would have made sure that the apples were there and been there for a few days untouched, so that they could be put in a basket on the altar, and then people could just take from them, or they were given. You know, it's yeah, we've had to do a lot of sort of little bits and pieces, make sure there's appropriate distance between people. I'm not sure what we're doing at Halloween, because unless we have a raging fire in the middle, it's going to be too cold to go outside and work. I'm getting too old to do that. So absolutely have no idea. We've been having lots of Zoom meetings and talking, but it's not the same. You know, we miss that camaraderie. We miss being with our friends and our family. And it is hard. It's been very hard. But we've got to put the health of our people and the rest of the community up there before ourselves.
Thank you so much, Lynn. That was absolutely fascinating, and lots of questions obviously came for you as well. I'm sure we'll go on thinking about lots of the things that you've said. I'm going to turn now to Roger. So if everybody gets themselves muted except for Roger. Roger's going to talk to us about two very important upcoming Baha'i celebrations. Over to you, Roger. You just need to unmute yourself. Roger.
Sorry, I've just done it now. Well, yes, indeed. Thank you very much for asking us and for the very interesting presentation so far. This could be a very somber presentation, but I've decided to put some fun things in it as well, and a bit about my personal history to balance it out. And I've chosen the title, The Covenant of Friendships. And as you say, it's on the occasion of the birthdays of the two founders of the Baha'i Faith. And greetings from all those Baha'is who aren't here, who know many of the people who in the Interfaith network. The overview goes like this: the covenant of friendships made by all of the high prophets with their followers always allowed for bridge building and service to others. And we've heard a splendid presentation about that, as in the story of the Good Samaritan. So new friends, I suggest, often come along because one of us, or more of us, several of us, have tried to create a bridge between and with whom they're at to a wider network. And that's the way I suggest that ultimately peace will come. Just a little bit historically now. The 18th of October celebrates the birth of the Bab. His life dates were 1819 to 1850. And his name Bab means gate in Arabic. And it's considered his religion paved the way for the manifestation or messenger or high prophet Baha'u'llah, similar to the relationship that is between John the Baptist and Jesus Christ. He was born in 1819 in Shiraz, Iran. The Bab's mission was to awaken the people to the fact that a new period in human history had begun. He called for spiritual and moral reformation, a revolutionary message in his time. However, the Bab and Baha'u'llah are seen as independent manifestations of God, as well as the Bab being the precursor to Baha'u'llah. The 19th of October celebrates the birth of Baha'u'llah, and his dates were 1817, and he passed away or ascended in 1892. Baha'u'llah was born in 1817 in Tehran, Iran, and established the Baha'i Faith, whose principal teachings are three forms of oneness: the oneness of humanity, the oneness of religion, and the oneness of God. The appearance of Baha'u'llah has been likened to a spiritual springtime, destined to spread peace and unity around the globe. And all of us here today are working for that one way or another. Now I switch to personally speaking. In my childhood days, my religious education started in the school I went to. Not all state schools now teach religion at all. I was then sent by my parents to the railway mission. The railway mission. It had a corrugated roof and it was built for those who worked on the railway in Watford. As you know, it's an important junction. And a lady came and picked me up, and I walked down the road with my hand in hers. And there was, I think it might have been the same lady, played a harmonium, and we sang, "The wise man built his house upon the rock, and the rain came tumbling down. The rain came down, and the floods came up, and the house on the rock stood firm." You may well have sung that early in your lives as well. Next, I joined the Methodist Church in Watford. Now, there was an incentive, and that was the fact that it had a youth club which included girls. The club leader played records by some guy called Elvis, and it was, well, Baha'u'llah, She's My Baby, and the rest. Later on, although I became a Baha'i in 1963, I felt the need to have a bridge or a gateway to each of the major traditions. Such bridge building is part of Baha'i teachings. Taking us to the present, well, right now I'm being taught much about a Christian and interspiritual worldview through attending a 90-minute Saturday meeting. It is a movement founded on the teachings of the great Father Thomas Keating. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard of him, and the contemporary scholar and mystic Cynthia Bourgeault. The network is called Contemporary Outreach, and I hope I'm not mistaken, but I think there might be 300,000 of the people in this network globally. Most importantly, they teach the greatest form of contemplative prayer and meditation that I've ever come across in 50 years of searching. What I learned in the railway mission has come alive again for me 70 years later, when we then sang "The wise man built his house upon the rock," etc. So my bridge building quest, I think of in the following way, and I've presented it as a quasi poem. It's not really a poem, and I've titled it "Only Connect, All is One." Only Connect in the sense of Howard's End, wonderful novel, perhaps even more wonderful film. Holiness and Oneness, this is a subtitle, Holiness and Oneness in the World's Great Wisdom Traditions, Daoist, Sufi Islamic, Jewish, Hindu, Christian, Buddhist, and Baha'i. The at oneness, I suggest, it lies in the mystic heart of their teachings. And the quasi-poem goes like this: "Through His Holiness Jesus Christ, I found His Holiness Baha'u'llah. Through His Holiness Baha'u'llah, I found the Sufi path and His Holiness Muhammad. Through the Sufi path and His Holiness Muhammad, I found His Holiness Moses. Through His Holiness Moses, I found His Holiness Lord Krishna. Through His Holiness Lord Krishna, I found His Holiness the Buddha. Through His Holiness the Buddha, I found the Tao Te Ching." So I suggest that through all of these high prophets and sages, there runs this covenant of relationships and friendships. All the true core, I suggest, of their teachings lies in the mystical silence and stillness. Through their mystical heart-centered teachings, we can lose ourself and find ourself, capital S. That is, that to learn to die before we die, as it is sometimes metaphorically described. Through them, we might realize the goal of life for all of us, which I suggest, and I understand, is to attain the presence of God. The key to entering deeper oneness is the silence and stillness of the mystical core teachings. So currently are my gateway teachers? Well, as well as Abdul Baha, Adib Tehazadeh for the Baha'i teaching, or the Baha'i. I mean, obviously I've got a bridge to it anyway. Thich Nhat Hanh, who you may have heard of, for Buddhism. Cynthia Bourgeot and Father Thomas Keeping for Christianity. Eknath Easwaran for Hinduism. Abraham Joshua Heschel for Judaism. Rumi for the Sufi and Islamic tradition. And Jacob Needleman for Daoism. All the core of these teachings, there is the mystical, the transcendent, and non-duality. At the core of each, there is silence and stillness as the language of God. The language of God is silence and stillness. Cynthia Bourgeot, contemporary scholar and mystic, first led me into contemplative prayer and meditation. And a beautiful way to slide into the contemplative prayer and meditation is this chant, which I won't chant, but it's chanted, especially with descant, is beautiful. It's by St. Patrick, and it's based on Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. So there's a beautiful way of entering into that stillness and silence. So finally, almost finally, as an invitation, we have a 15-minute interfaith wisdom meditation at 7 o'clock every day. And I can share with you the Zoom for that because I'm in permanent lockdown still. And the details of that are on this handout. And I'm going to end by saying that down through the ages, we all have been guided from within the covenant of friendships. For the covenant for Moses, for Abraham, and for the great figures that has founded these various traditions. Your community will have great teachings about the covenant of friendships, I suggest. So here are two from my community just to end with. Do not be content with showing friendship in words alone. Let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who may cross your path. That was Abdul Baha. And from Baha'u'llah, the essence of faith is fewness of words and abundance of deeds. He whose words exceed his deeds, know verily his death is better than his life. So I've offered the notion of the covenant of friendships down through the ages, which we're building on still today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Roger. That was, again, absolutely fascinating, and especially having your own childhood and your own journey through life woven into that as well.
Yes,
as Lynn did in her talk too. So that gives it extra meaning, really. Would anybody like to kick off and ask Roger any questions or make any comments directly to Roger, apart from thank you very much, Roger?
I'd just like to say, as a Quaker, your comments about stillness and silence really resonate, and for us, that's something that's absolutely central to the way that we worship, and that deeper stillness and silence you find, and meeting with God through that is just wonderful. So thank you. I was very moved by what you said, Roger. You spoke beautifully, and I really loved it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Roger?
I just would like to say, just one moment, Andrew, if you wouldn't mind. I've now run more than 450 of the One Garden seminars, which are on Thursday mornings on Zoom now. But for the longest single period, it was at the Quaker Meeting House in Brighton. That, along with the one in Lewes, always makes me quietly and deeply happy, because the very pews that people have sat in over decades and decades, a century or two, seem to be imbued with the spirit of the Quakers. So I feel a very strong and respectful connection. Thank you. I think Andrew was...
I wanted to ask you for the detail of the Christian woman who led you forward at one point. What was her name?
Cynthia, that's the easy bit. And her, because there's a similar French name, but her French name is spelt B-O-U-R-G-E-A-U-L-T, Bourgeois.
B-O-U-R-G.
Yes.
And then?
I'll just put my, you feel free to email me and I'll send you more information.
She's written a really wonderful book called The Wisdom Jesus.
Yes.
Which you probably would be very interested in, Andrew.
The Wisdom of Jesus.
Yeah, the Wisdom Jesus.
Mm.
And in this book, she really explores her understanding of Jesus as a wisdom teacher. Just like, well, not just like, but in the tradition of other wisdom teachers like the Buddha.
Yeah.
As Roger mentioned in his poem when he was talking about the line of wisdom teachers. But
Roger, can you just spell again? B-O-U-R-G.
E-A-U-L-T.
E-A-U-L-T. Right.
Also, you might be interested to know that from the Centre for Action and Contemplation, which is the organisation that Roger was talking about, that has these very large number of members from right across the world, they do email out every Saturday, I think it is, a week's worth of Christian meditations. And they're written by Father Richard Raw often,
really
draws in a lot of other Christian writers. So Cynthia Bourgeois might contribute, or other Christian writers, as well as referring to people from other faiths as well. And they're quite short, so that if you've only got 10 minutes to spare, you can read Monday's meditation in 5 or 10 minutes. And I receive those, and other friends of mine do, and they are really valuable and worth just asking for them to be sent.
I wanted just to acknowledge Bernadette here, who's a member of our One Garden seminar on Thursdays. She introduced me, I suspect, to 2 women mystics. Cynthia Bourgeois is one, and she's very much alive. And the other one, whose name escapes me, but Bernadette may remember, was another woman mystic, but she passed away about a year or 2 ago. Do you remember Bernadette? And I wasn't ready for those 2 teachers at that time, but as happens to all of us, sometimes teachers don't speak to us initially, but later in our lives they do.
Yes, I can't bring the other one to mind at the moment.
It's okay. Again, if anybody wants it, email me and I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bernadette.
Just listening to all these fascinating links, which I am not going to remember all just now. I wonder whether on our website, coming out of these new meetings, we might be able to build up a resource of people that are mentioned or websites that are mentioned, because I think it would be fantastic to be able to go back to that and to refer other people to and say, look, we've started these new meetings, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. I'm really so pleased we're doing these, and build up a resource that would be so useful as an interfaith resource.
I think that would be a really good idea, Helen. And also, rather than just emailing Roger's talk to people who are here now, I'll email it to all members of the Interfaith Contact Group so that they get some sort of sense as to how informative these meetings are. It will help them to see what we're talking about, won't it? So if Roger doesn't mind.
No, it's fine. Usually I spend up to a week preparing for the Thursday seminar. It's just nice that anything gets used more than once or gets a wider distribution than it normally has.
So it would just go to our Interfaith Contact Group members, which is probably about 90 or 100 people, something.
That's fine. That's wonderful. Like that. Thank you.
And
may I ask something about the resource, which is a brilliant idea. As a healthcare chaplain, I'm very aware of the work of an organization called the Gideons, and they distribute copies of New Testament and Psalms. And what they have is a brilliant thing where there's right at the beginning, it says, if you're feeling sad, look here, and gives you some page numbers. If you're feeling deserted, look here. And it goes through a whole list of existential possibilities and suggests places to go. So I think in the resource, it'd be quite good to think of human predicaments and think of resources that might meet those situations as a way of ordering the resource, which is a brilliant idea. And I'd be really interested in helping with that.
I'd just like to mention that Stephen, who's here with us from One Garden, also made some lockdown films. And he and Sarah might like to have a bit of discussion about that. There were one or two professional films. There was one on Mubi, which is an art film site, and that was extraordinary. If you ever catch up with it, a film director recorded her mother, and then when she was herself locked in, she played episodes from this recording of her mother while she was dying, I think, or up to the time of her death. So just to mention that. Also, we have Amber here, who's one of our two specialists in Advaita Vedanta. But she and Raki both spent about a year and a third in ashrams, and they also chant beautifully in Sanskrit. So I'm just saying, looking around, there are human resources definitely here amongst us.
I would be really delighted to hear from anybody who would like to offer to speak in these meetings, because we'll be doing this every month, at least for the next year. And with, say, 3 people each time, we can get through quite a lot of people in 12 months. So if those people, Roger's friends that he's just mentioned, would like to offer, and if there's a particular time of year when you think your talk would most fit in because of the season or because of some celebration or whatever, then just let me know and then I can slot people in. So yeah, the more the merrier, really, from our point of view. And it's all very informal and, you know, friendly, so it's not really too threatening for anyone.
Sue has been trying to say something for the last half an hour.
Oh dear.
Hello everyone. Firstly, I wanted to say how interesting all the talks have been, and I'm here representing the East Sussex Women's Interfaith Network. We're a group of women from all different faiths, and we meet in each other's houses normally, but we've been doing that over Zoom due to the coronavirus. But it's been so interesting listening to what you've been saying, and I've been jotting down little notes so that I can report back to the ladies at our next meeting. But if I put my email on the chat, could I be added to your list of contacts so I could get all the information?
Yes, we've made Lucy a friend, so she will now get everything, but we can make you one as well. So we're right on 6 now. Does anybody want to add anything further at this point? If not, I just would like to thank you all so much for coming, because without you coming, there would be no interesting meeting, would there? And it's lovely to see the new people here, people who've not been before. Hope you'll come again. It's totally a drop-in thing, so don't feel you have to make it every month. If you can just come occasionally or whenever you can, that's still lovely. And thank you all so much, and especially thank you to Roger, to Lynn and to Sarah for your contributions. So I hope you stay well, go well, and see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.